All liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. The lake which burns with fire and brimstone, also called the second death. The following illustration that I introduced in Part 4 shows what is meant by this lake of fire or second death. As we see, the second death is the laying down of our life for the sake of others, corresponding to the much fruit of John 12:24. Since both water and light are critical components needed for life, then the lake of fire denotes the message of the cross, the message of self-sacrifice that Jesus exemplified by his ministry, death, and resurrection 2,000 years ago. The message of the cross is the message of life. To be cast into this lake is to be challenged by the message of self-denial. What do we read in Revelation 21:8? All liars shall have their part in this lake of fire or second death. All liars, no exceptions. Regarding the 7 things God hates, I don't believe it's coincidence then that a proud look is immediately followed by a lying tongue. And no, we're not talking about telling a simple lie a time or two. A lying tongue and all liars refers to an ongoing and ingrained behavior resulting from the carnal self. In the 10 Commandments, it equates to, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Our word false in this commandment is defined by Strong's as an untruth, by implication, a sham. In the 7 things God hates, a false witness is the 6th thing and sums up the preceding 5. So, what is the definition of a lie? I asked Gemini and it gave me the following. At its core, a lie is an intentional untruth. It is a statement or communication made by someone who knows or believes it to be false, deliberately presented as the truth to mislead someone else. While the basic concept is simple, a lie actually requires 3 distinct moving parts to exist. The statement, you communicate information. This can be spoken, written, or even a gesture like a nod. The knowledge, you know or believe that the information is false. The intention, you actively intend for the listener to believe the false statement as truth. The biggest difference between an honest mistake and a lie is intent. If you say something false but genuinely believe it's true, you aren't lying. You're simply mistaken. If you say something false knowing it's false but with the explicit goal of deceiving the other person, it is a lie. While a standard lie is usually thought of as a spoken or written statement, human deception often runs deeper than the words we choose. True deception typically begins in the heart, with the underlying desire, motive, or willingness to mislead before it ever manifests as a thought in the mind or a spoken phrase. Because of this, people can actually lie without ever changing the facts, such as through lies of omission, leaving out a massive piece of crucial context to let someone draw the wrong conclusion. Half-truths, mixing a little bit of truth with a deceptive spin to distort the bigger picture. All of this is good information, but here's what stands out to me. A lie comes back to intent, and intent is a matter of love or a lack of it. Love for self, lack of love for others. And so we devise a lie, whether a omission, a half-truth, or an out-and-out fabrication or fantasy. We're then told that if we say something falsely but genuinely believe it's true, we aren't lying. We're simply mistaken. This too comes back to intent, for to be mistaken can be an honest ignorance or result from the ignorance of pride. Today, I believe it's too often the latter. In Matthew 24, Jesus speaks of the destruction of the temple of God and its buildings. Following this, the disciples asked him, "When will these things be? What will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" The first thing out of his mouth, "Take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. A few verses later he says, Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. Finally, then if anyone says to you, Look, here is the Christ, or there, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. No doubt, Jesus emphasizes the matter of deception. So here we are. False Christ and false prophets rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. Recognize our word signs. It's the word rendered miracles in Revelation 16:14. This brings us back to the following. He performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs, which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast, who was wounded by the sword and lived. As we learned in part 24 of this series, these passages regard the beast of Revelation 13:11, aka the false prophet, aligning with what Jesus says in Matthew 24:23 and 24. Now, I want you to notice the sign we're given. He even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. Let's consider this in light of the following passages. Now it came to pass, when the time had come for him to be received up, that he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem, and sent messengers before his face. And as they went, they entered a village of the Samaritans to prepare for him. But they did not receive him, because his face was set for the journey to Jerusalem. And when his disciples James and John saw this, they said, Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, just as Elijah did? But he turned and rebuked them and said, You do not know what manner of spirit you're of. For the Son of Man did not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. And they went to another village. Why did the Samaritans refuse to receive Christ? Perhaps it was due to the fact that the Jews believed Jerusalem and the Temple Mount were the exclusive places chosen by God, while the Samaritans believed Mount Gerizim in Samaria was the true holy mountain. To the Samaritans, welcoming a famous prophet who was openly bypassing their holy mountain to go worship at their rival's temple was seen as an insult to their entire identity. It looked like Jesus was officially choosing the Jewish side over theirs. Entire identity. Self. I cannot help but see a parallel in 1 Corinthians 1:10 through 13 and 3:1 through 7. Now, think about how James and John reacted and consider the Lord's response. Could James and John actually command literal fire to come down from heaven? It doesn't matter, my friend, for just the fact that they raised the question to Jesus resulted in their rebuke. You do not know what manner of spirit you're of, says the Lord. I cannot help but think of the Lord's words on the cross as well. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. You do not know. They do not know. Not knowing is ignorance, right? And what was Jesus referring to when he said they did not know? Was it not to their spirit and desire to bring harm? Doesn't pride and accusation ripple beneath this desire? Of course it does. And here, my friend, is the spirit of the world that Paul mentions in 1 Corinthians 2:12, causing the division Paul witnesses among the believers of his time. So, let's ask ourselves, what manner of spirit is it that condemns others to unending torment? That's it for this study, but be sure to join me for the next. And please feel free to like, comment, or subscribe. And I sincerely thank you for being a part of Grain of Wheat Publishing.